Every relationship that we get into and out of offers us lessons. That's what relationships are. It is self-development work. When you break up with someone or they break up with you, this is an opportunity for reflection, looking at what went well, what didn't go well, what am I going to change? What can I reflect on it and learn from such that my next relationship isn't the exact same as the one I just got out of? This is an opportunity for you to learn about yourself. Not only learn, but take care of yourself on a physical level. This is, looking at how are you eating? How are you sleeping? What are the quality of friendships that you have in your life? Do you have a dream, goal, or objective for your life? Do you have a career? There's so much to figure out in your bubble, in your individual sphere of life. When you do that, not like you have to have every single thing in your life figured out, but get into a place where you genuinely feel happy.
Get some wins.
And you will almost organically manifest an aligned partner. Welcome back to the Medicine Podcast. My name is Mimi. Sitting next to me is my husband.
Wow.
Chase.
What is going on, everybody? Wow, you revealed my middle name. Jesus.
Well, I don't think that they heard because we spoke at the same time. So It's still a secret to most people.
All right, my sacred middle name is still safe. Welcome back to the Medicine Podcast, everybody. We are sitting here as a formerly wed duo, husband
Currently
and wife.
wed.
What did I said formally.
Yeah. Oh, formerly. I think I said formerly.
Well, that's true as
well.
well.
That is true as well. Yeah.
No, formally re-wed as of, what was the date? April 13th?
Yeah, April 13th.
Yeah. We're recording this episode realizing that it's probably going to be released a little ways out. And you're likely listening to us having come back from a beautiful trip in Greece that I am now manifesting in this April.
It was wonderful. It was the best trip of our life, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But we're really excited to get back into the swing of things with the Medicine Podcast. We've had a ton of guests on recently. We did our astrology series with Adrian Abeta, which I hope was impactful and beautiful for many. And we are really jumping back into our episodes between the two of us with a new intention and a new purpose for creating amazing conversations.
I think we have amazing guests. We have had amazing guests over the last 4+ years of doing the podcast, which is crazy that it's been 4 years. We started it's been more than that. Yeah, 4.5 years now. Yeah. We started in 2020. Yeah. January 13th, 2020 was our first episode. So over 4 years now. And I think that we've had amazing guests, but it's kind of wild how much feedback we've received over these years of random people, recognizing us on the street or on Instagram or whatever, saying that they love our guest episodes, but they really like our episodes together more. We have just had an overwhelming amount of feedback that people love these episodes with you and I more even than the guest episodes. So we are pivoting a little bit where we're going to be leaning more into episodes with Chase and I, and still definitely having guests, but maybe fewer than, in years past. So this is, we're leaning into the feedback that we've received from people.
We've done a lot of work around relationships and sacred partnership, and a lot of the conversations that you and I have had by ourselves have been in the domain of relationships, and of course health and wellness and mindfulness and some of these other things that are so important to us. But we have also been open to relationship questions, relationship feedback, stories that people want to share with us about their relationships, or maybe, people that they love and care about in their relationship journey. And we've got this just list that is a mile long of people who are looking for support and looking for healthy dialogue and conversation around the nuances and the challenges that is the relationship space. And so we were like, why don't we make a fine dining experience of relationship advice, for lack of a better term? And so these shows, where it's Mimi and myself, will be that. It will be a fine dining experience. We'll have some segments that you can call them the appetizers, and then we'll have an entree that is filled with relationship Q&A, as well as some relationship storytelling. And you can expect these types of episodes to be fun, but also hopefully interject some pretty informative relationship wisdom.
We want a balance of like real relationship goodness and wisdom, and like there's enough heaviness out in the world. There's enough just straight faces out there. Like we need to remember to be light and to be fun and to play and freaking laugh every day. It's just, we don't need to add any more heaviness to your day. Surely you're already feeling heaviness from out in the world. So these episodes of The Medicine will hopefully be a little bit of a reprieve. You'll get some goodness, some relationship goodness, some tips, but also like hopefully we're making you laugh, making you smile.
Totally. So we've got 3 segments. Let's call them appetizers to the entree. And then we'll jump into relationship questions, some relationship advice, and we'll wrap this thing up with a crazy story.
Yeah, we call it 3 questions and a crazy story.
But first, appetizer number 1, we call this one Shit I've Been On Lately, baby, where we share one thing that we are currently obsessed with.
I think when you originally came up with this name, you were like, this is shit I've been on lately.
Yeah.
It was like
shit I've been on lately. Yeah, here we are.
Here we are. You want me to go first?
Yeah, take it away.
All right. So here's some shit I've been on lately. You know what I'm going to say. ACOTAR, A Court of Thorns and Roses series. So ACOTAR is really, it's the first book of the series. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're probably not a woman in your late 20s or early 30s. But even if you are, this is a book series by Sarah J. Maas, or Maas, M-A-A-S. She really has created a cult, honestly. And I've seen so many of my girlfriends putting this book series on their stories, like taking pictures like, oh my God, this is amazing. Kind of just like going crazy. And I resisted for a while because I really tend to enjoy self-development books. I just love growth and evolution and learning and reading books that are, helping my soul evolve basically. But I don't know. I just had this urge, this nudge a few months ago to just like, you know what? I want to read some fantasy. I want to read some books that don't take work for me. And it's okay. Like I'm still like doing well as a human if I'm not like learning every single point of the day. Right. So, I thought of this series and I was like, I'm going to read this series. And I started like less than 6 weeks ago. These books are like 600 pages and I have been devouring these
devouring
books.
is a good word.
And so ACOTAR is the kind of the shorthand, A Court of Thorns and Roses. And it's basically fairy fantasy. It's a culmination of like Beauty and the Beast and Lord of the Rings and Harry Potter and some of these other major like archetypal stories and heroes' journeys. And she's an incredible writer. They are spicy in that there's some hot and heavy scenes, if you know what I mean. Yeah, very, very spicy scenes. But the actual story in and of itself is really, really good and just absolutely like grips you. So I've been basically reading a book a week, which is like, they're like 500-600 page books. And I was not expecting to fly through this series in like 5 weeks, but I'm on the last book right now. I think it's A Court of Silver Flames, and it's great. It's awesome. I think that there's actually 2 more books in this series that she has yet to write. That's what I hear from people, but this is the last one that's available. I'm trying to finish this one before we go to Greece so I can start the next series, which is Throne of Glass, and people say that this is like 10 times better than the one that I'm in right now.
Wow. Well, it's actually impressive the way that you've devoured this series, because every waking moment that isn't something that is a to-do, you are reading this book or you have it propped open in some place. You're eating breakfast and completely like face into this book, and it reminds me of what you're capable of.
When I'm really interested in something, yeah, totally. And like It has opened up a total like new corner of the internet, of internet humor, of meme humor.
Oh, right.
Like if I go to my explore page now, it's AI fairy art and memes that people make about this series, which is just like, it's so freaking hilarious. And there's part of me that like wants you to read or listen to this series because I want to talk about it with you. I have other people obviously to talk about it with, but one, I think you'd like it. But two, it would just be fun to be able to talk about it, but no pressure.
It reminds me of the Harry Potter days. I was late to the Harry Potter party.
You were a late Potterhead.
Mimi went hard in the paint on Potter, and I sort of like just out of my own stubbornness resisted it for a while before I just fell head over heels for Harry Potter.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe someday. I don't have time for that in my life right now, but I enjoy living vicariously through the fantasy realm that you are existing in through these books.
Yeah. And if you're interested and if you want some fairy smut in your life.
Wow, smut.
That's what people call it, fairy smut. Then check out this series. It's really good. It's holding my grip, and I'm excited for Throne of Glass.
Wow.
The thing that they don't tell you is when a friend gets you into this Sarah J. Maas world, you don't realize that you're not committing to one book or 5. You're committing to like 18 because she has multiple series.
Wow.
And so as soon as you finish, you're like, all right, what's the next series? Because it's so good. So just be warned, if you don't have that kind of time or mental capacity, then you might not even want to pick it up because you will be hooked.
Right.
Yeah. In this little cup, I have my favorite way to enjoy mushy love, which is in combination with cold milk. We drink raw cow's milk, and I put it about 8 ounces of milk in with about a scoop and a half of mushy love. That combination, like the cold version of mushy love, tastes like liquid graham crackers. Like, I shit you not. If you don't know yet what mushy love is, it's our mushroom elixir with 500 milligrams of chaga, which is amazing for gut support. They call it the king of mushrooms. And then 500 milligrams as well of tremella mushroom, which is the beauty mushroom. And she is most known for holding 500 times her weight in water. The more hydrated we are, the more plump and dewy and fresh and young our skin looks.
Plump and dewy.
For Mushy Love, go to getmushylove.com and you can use the code MEDICINE for a nice little discount that we only give to our Medicine Podcast listeners. What kind of shit you been on lately?
Man, the shit that I've been on lately is the idea of the subtle body and the development of the subtle body. And this is in my spiritual life, which really just ebbs and flows, man. Sometimes I feel like so practical and like I'm really feeling nothing esoteric at all and wondering if I ever felt anything to begin with. And then, you know, these waves come where I'm inspired to connect with something higher than myself and metaphysical. And long story short, between a really incredible weekend with our friend and mentor, Paul Chek, over our wedding and our ceremony weekend, and some recent consumption of podcasts that Dr. Robert Gilbert, who's a researcher and teacher, who's just a master in spirituality and esotericism, I have come to this like really newfound respect and understanding for the development of the subtle body. So Paul Chek is writing this program. He's going to be launching in June. It's probably already launched by now, called Spirit Gym.
It's a book.
It's a book, but it's a course program. It's it's very interactive, so it's more than just like a physical book. And then Robert Gilbert has been, you know, on this sort of podcast cycle of talking about the subtle body, and I've just like it's resonated more than usual. I've heard this term before, but I was like, okay, whatever, another one of these like spiritual terms. I'll figure it out later and what this actually means. But it's this idea. This concept of the subtle body in the context of spiritual development and non-physical aspects of your actual body. These energetic aspects, these astral components, the etheric components, depending on what tradition, you know, you can use various vocab words, but it's this, that the body is larger than just your physical meat suit.
Where your skin ends.
Right. And to develop these versions of your body that are outside of the physical domain, it seems really magical when it's talked about. And a lot of times I've been like, all right, whatever, man, like energy body, great. That sounds awesome. I believe you. I just don't know if I'm feeling this or whatever. Like, I just don't know what you mean. Let's stick to the stuff that I can actually feel is practical. But through leaning into this more, having talked long with Paul about the development of these types of, energy bodies, and then through Robert Gilbert's just beautiful articulation of the subtle body, it really has to do with the development of things that are quite practical. The development of your intuition and awareness that you have an intuition, emotional balancing. So being the observer of your emotional experiences and realizing that you may be at an emotional high or an emotional low, but that may not be indicative of who you are, and you don't have to make impulsive decisions off of that emotionality. It can be as simple as growing spiritually. What does that mean? Your connection to your soul, to your higher self, maybe to your purpose, or maybe to God, however you want to define that. It's physically improving your body. Your body is an antenna to be tuning to spiritual frequencies, or tuning yourself physically to these subtle body components that actually make up your entire body. And then it's like maybe most importantly, it's tapping into your creativity and your imagination. And for whatever reason, it just landed this time. Like intuition, working on balancing your emotions, connecting to God or your soul and your purpose, using your creativity more, tapping into your imagination more, are all developing the subtle body. And it's this larger component to your body that can actually, if you believe in something like reincarnation, can withstand the forgetting that we experience through the reincarnation process.
You through death.
Yeah. And so it's just like really landed super hard for me. And I encourage anybody to get on this shit as well.
Yeah.
Look up the subtle body. Robert Gilbert is an incredible resource for articulating what this includes. And he actually makes it so that it's very available, because he breaks it down into steps, like I just mentioned, that make a lot of sense. Like, actually just being more creative in my life, tapping into my imagination, supports developing this subtle body.
Yeah, as you're speaking, it really points and highlights, like, we can hear some things, we can hear about a concept, 5 times, and the 6th time is when it clicks into place, where you're like, oh, I get it. It's not just like going in one ear and out the other, and you're like, yeah. It's like, oh, something clicks, like a puzzle piece, like rotating into place.
Totally.
And sometimes it depends on the messenger, right? The teacher of whatever the concept is, and in this case spirituality, but this works with like marketing. It's like you see the product once, twice, 3, 4, 5, and then you buy it on the 6th time because you're like, okay, I think I really need this. The same thing applies, I think, as we navigate our self-development. And the first time you hear something, it might sound like a different language. It might be like, what the heck is this person talking about? The second time it's like, oh yeah, I remember that, but I couldn't teach it. The third time is like you memorize the vocab words and you can say it back to someone, but it hasn't landed yet in such a way that you can actually apply it to your daily living. And I think this was one of those moments where we're watching this episode. Did you mention it on Know Thyself?
Particularly, Know Thyself podcast. Yeah. He's also been on Paul Chek's podcast multiple times.
Robert Gilbert on Paul Chek and Know Thyself. This episode with what's the guy's name? Andre, on Know Thyself was phenomenal. Yeah. Chase and I were glued to the screen. We came out of that episode. We were like, whatever this guy is selling, just like take my money. And he's really like not selling, like he is not a salesman, but he does offer courses if people are wanting to dig into this, and they are not for the faint of heart. They're like dense textbook type course material. But if this is where you're at in your self-development or spiritual journey, like, good for you. And this could be really, really good for anyone and everyone.
Grateful to Paul, grateful to Robert. These ideas to me sometimes seem so quote unquote out there, but they break it down in a way that it's not just understood, because I can understand it, it's felt, and it feels attainable and applicable and something that I should participate in. So big shout out to the subtle body.
Yeah.
All right, next, Appetizer, if you will. We call this one Cringe Corner, where we showcase one clip, bit, or quote that makes us want to put hot sauce in our eyes, bite down on aluminum, and or maybe step on a Lego.
Just for relief. Yeah, this Cringe Corner, brought to you by Instagram. So this clip is taken from a conversation between two men. They happen to be Christian nationalists, meaning they believe everyone should be Christians. Not just Christians, but like fundamental Christians. And I couldn't not, for our first Cringe Corner, I couldn't not share this because it is the cringiest of conversations that I think I might have ever heard in my life. So without further ado, here is Joel Webbin explaining why he opposes women voting. Let me start this over.
Let's say you can wave your Christian nationalist wand. We wake up tomorrow in a Christian nation, a Christian nationalist nation as you're describing, all right? There's a lot of fears that people have. Here's one of them. Will women have the right to vote tomorrow if you wave that magic Christian wand?
No.
Okay, why not? I want to get into why not. Yeah, that's great.
Because if we had a Christian nation tomorrow and women did have the right to vote, we would not have a Christian nation within 50 years.
Okay, elaborate a little bit on that.
Because the husband has been appointed by God as the head of his home. And no-fault divorce and women's suffrage, more than anything else, ultimately split the household. So we're not talking about women not having a say in society. We're talking about representative government.
That's right.
Right now, there are people in Williamson County, Texas, where I'm a resident, who represent me. No one gets to represent themselves in every single scenario.
That's right.
We're all represented by somebody else, whether we like it or not. So why not have women and children represented by a man who loves them and is willing to die for them, protects them, and provides for them? I would love to be represented by just one person in civil government who has that level of commitment to
That's
me.
good.
So it's not about, men get to vote and women don't. And no, it's about the household vote. The individual building block of society, according to the word of God, is not atomistic individuals. It is the molecule, not the atom, but the molecule of the family.
Yeah.
The family unit should not be separated. What God has joined together, let no man put asunder. I believe that women's suffrage was just one liberal attempt by people who hated Christ to sever the covenant bond between husband and wife. And that's what happened. We would not have one Democrat president. This is a statistic fact. We would not have one Democrat president in the last 50 years if women couldn't vote. So I don't want women to vote because I want strong marriages. I want cohesive households. I want representative government all the way down to the family. And I also want babies not murdered.
Yeah.
I don't want drag queen story hour. I don't want rainbow jihad. And none of that could happen if women couldn't vote.
Wow. It's cringy, like... this is stepping on the Lego of my freaking mind.
Right.
According to the word of God. I mean, where do we want to start here?
There's so much here. The matter of factness that he speaks with about women in general is like so cringy to me. Speaking about women as if they belong to men. And I understand the argument that he's making. He's saying that, like, if a household is united, they only need one representative, right? And that doesn't sound too bad. But what you're saying is that what a man thinks is ultimately better and should stand alone from what a woman thinks, and he should be able to provide that to whatever the representative government all the way down that he's talking about. Well, what if she doesn't agree with her husband on something, and this is really portraying a picture as if every man is perfect in his opinions, in his discernment, when we know for a fact that that's just not true.
No.
So like, I get what he's trying to say, but the logic breaks down because you're assuming that every man is living in accordance with what Jesus taught, which is another conversation, because that's not how most Christians live, is what Jesus taught.
Yeah. Yeah. His use of according to the word of God, which, I mean, what word of God? It is a book of man's writings that if he's referring to the Bible, which I assume he is. And there's a host of conversations we've had on this podcast that goes at length as to why these are men's interpretations.
I want to send this clip to Bob Peck and just see what he has to say, because Bob is one of our good friends and he's been on the show multiple times, recently, even a couple episodes ago. And he, this is a man, Bob, where he's in our last episode with him, he's weeping over how much respect and reverence he has for these Christian mystic women.
Yeah.
And he's just like, he's got tears in his eyes because he's so blown away by their devotion and their intelligence, their spiritual intelligence, and their ability to teach others. And I just like, I really want to know what he would say about this.
Yeah. Someone had a mommy hurt him. Someone had a girlfriend hurt him, or a wife hurt him, or something. But if this man could sit in front of the experience of being present with the divine feminine, he would be at his knees in worship for the magnificence, for the intelligence that femininity is.
Yeah.
And there are times and places where a man who in his balanced masculinity makes sound, logical, leadership decisions that are worthy of being followed and honored.
Absolutely.
And there are times that women in their balanced femininity are able to tune into their intuition, are able to think completely outside of the box in an artistic, creative way that is worthy of being followed and listened to and honored.
Mm-hmm.
And
beautifully put.
That's not dogmatic, motherfuckers. It's just like fact.
Yes. Yeah. You can't get rid of the individual and just assume that every man is perfect. So sorry, my guy, but congrats. You made it into the first ever Cringe Corner.
Welcome to Cringe Corner.
We salute you. All right, next segment.
This is appetizer number 3, Say One Nice Thing, where we are actively trying to practice looking on the bright side.
All right, Chase, I want you to say one nice thing about American politics.
Oh, comedic relief. That's about it at this point.
Yeah, it is it's just theater comedy.
The problem with it now is, like, even the last election, it felt a little more like hashtag not funny is what it feels like now. Like hashtag too close to home. Yeah. Like this is too serious now, everybody. Yeah. The last couple have been more like, oh, it's kind of funny the way he insults Hillary Clinton. Like it's kind of hilarious. But this time around, it's like, God damn it, we got to get these assholes out of here because like our lives, our kids' lives, and everybody else is like actually on the brink here.
I swear, things get so much more real. We don't even have a kid yet, but we are like talking about it. Right. We're actively trying to have a kid, and everything becomes so much more real when that's in your purview. Like I have another body that I have to like keep alive and help to thrive in this world. What world are we bringing them into? And it just motivates you in an extra way. And it'll be even more, I think, amplified, obviously, when we have a physical child.
Totally. And even, the 2016 election between Hillary and Trump, I'd been paying taxes as an adult for, 4 or 5 years or something. It was relatively new. But at this point, we're 34 years old. We've been paying taxes for quite some time. And when I understand the mechanism of taxes, and I'm not saying that, I want to be super rich and never have to pay taxes. I'm uncomfortable with just the blind throwing money at the government and then watching the deterioration of our country and the world at large.
Not knowing where it's going.
And so that's a component too, is that it's like, dude, I've put away quite a bit of cash towards this thing we call the government, and what the fuck is happening?
Where is it going?
But comedic relief.
Yeah. Yeah. There are some really funny Trump clips.
Oh my God.
I love the compilations where people put together just like, one or two sentences that he says in some random speech in some random town. And you're just like, oh my gosh, just palm to face.
My favorite is pronunciation of Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico.
So look that one up. And then where he is, I believe it's in Puerto Rico. There was like flooding, and he's there for humanitarian relief. And they're handing out like toilet paper and paper towels and supplies.
Yeah.
And he's got a crowd of people who are desperate, I'm sure, from being flooded out of their homes, and they're looking for support. He's taking like rolls of toilet paper like it's a basketball and putting it up and shooting it into the crowd of people. And he's got a nice shot. Like the memes that were going around were like, oh yeah, look at the follow through. Like the follow through is right on point. But it's sort of sad and sick and hilarious at the same time. So God damn it, that guy.
If y'all have not watched, if you like stand-up comedy, you have to check out Shane Gillis.
Oh yeah, he's like the number one comedian in the world right now.
I know, but he has his last stand-up special was called Beautiful Dogs.
Yeah,
and it's a Trump inside joke or whatever. You'll see when you watch it, but I think it's on Netflix. Definitely put it on your watch list. Shane Gillis, Beautiful Dogs. You will love it.
Oh Jesus! All right, say one nice thing, Mimi, about online password requirements that are 10 digits long with special characters, one capitalized, and no real words.
This feels like it's hitting close to home. This feels like a jab of sorts. Okay, I'll say one nice thing, then I'll explain why it's a jab. Or maybe you can explain why it's a jab.
I will.
The one nice thing is that these websites, these platforms, these subscriptions, or whatever you're freaking logging into, they're encouraging you to be creative so that you if you get hacked, you're not using the same password across every platform associated with your life, such that a hacker could get in and just ruin your entire life on every platform. So that's the one nice thing, is like they urge you to be creative, more creative than the last time, and are encouraging you to use one of these apps that is a cache of all your passwords and subscriptions and all these things that I do have on my phone. I think it's called like Dashlane. It's like a treasure trove of passwords, and I have about 150 in there.
The reason it's a little bit of a jab is because, as we all do, we've got to use the forget password button a couple times a year, maybe even 3 times a year. And it's usually at the worst time. It's usually when you're rushing to get into something. It's urgent. You're trying to dispute a credit card charge, or you've got some wild, financial issue and you can't log into the bank or whatever. And so you got to do the forget password, email, PIN, re-login, verify identification. It's a pain in the ass. We've all been there. It happens to me multiple times per year, despite the fact that I've got password, shortcuts that keep all my passwords together. I use tools like LastPass, and Google has these sort of memory mechanisms, as does Apple, to where they autofill your passwords. Blah 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 blah. Mimi every time is using the forgot password button every time you log into anything, and it cracks me up. I mean, it used to bother me, and now it's just like hilarious to me at this point, because you'll have the same facial expression too, where you're like, I just don't know why it's not working. It's like every time forgot password. If you did like a quick search in your Gmail around like security code, like forgot password button clicks, it would be like 3,000 that are sitting in there.
Okay. One, in my defense, it's not every time. And there's a second here. Chase will be like, what's the password to this, that, and the other platform that we're subscribed to for whatever? And I'm like, I don't have it off the top of my head. Do you know how many passwords I have, for all these things? And 3, in my defense, everything associated with our business from a tech standpoint, from the podcast standpoint, from Instagram, everything is linked to my emails, is linked to my life. And so I am the one that has to remember and get into all these things, these tech platforms and frame.io and freaking Instagram, and all of these things are under my name. And so I have a lot of passwords to navigate and remember, and it's a thing, you guys, but I'm getting better.
I love you through it.
That's all you have to say.
All right, guys, we are coming up on the entree. Here it's coming. I can see it steaming on the plates as the waiter walks it towards our table. We are into the relationship-centered entree of our podcast. This is 3 relationship questions. We have questions that people have submitted to us. In certain cases, we get forwarded other questions from people, screenshots from Reddit, other funny relationship questions or serious relationship questions that people might see on Instagram that they'll send to us. We encourage you to reach out and submit any questions that you may have. You can do that via Instagram to Mimi or myself. But we've got 3 questions here today, and we'll wrap this thing up with a crazy story. But first, Mimi, IG.
So this was a question. Of course, I'm going to leave it anonymous, but it was a really good question. And so I took a screenshot, and I wanted to read it on this episode here. So this was a DM that I received from, a man. I'm going to leave him anonymous. He paints a really hard, difficult picture of what's going on in his life right now. And, I think it's a good question for a lot of us. So he says, you and Chase's story interests me in regards to how you broke up and got back together 3 years later. That's pretty amazing, to be honest. You don't really hear about that happening very often. The reason it interests me is because I broke up with my partner last year. I was with her for 7 years. I saw that she moved on with someone else a few months ago, and it broke me, to be honest. She loved me and wanted a future together, bringing up saving for a house, etc. But I was so bad at communicating with her, I didn't have the tough conversations. I have had depression and anxiety most of my 20s. I'm 29 now, which didn't help me take action. I keep going over and over in my head the situations where I could have done better, where I could have changed or spoken up to save the relationship. I feel like I've lost her forever now. It makes it worse because the fact that she wanted to be with me and I pushed her away, but I realize now it was the worst thing I could have done. I hate myself. I feel like I've wasted so much time. I want to message her, but I'm not sure it's the best thing to do now that she is with someone else. What should I do? And, this is a really tough situation, but the reason why I brought it up mostly is because this happens all the time. People wonder, they break up and they wonder, should I get back together? Did I make a mistake? Which I want to speak to. But first, I want to speak to, at the beginning part of his message, he mentioned, you and Chase's story really interests me. And I know you guys separated, divorced, and got back together after 3 years. And this is not the first time this has come up. I've received probably 20 different inquiries, questions, like people, highlighting our situation and being like, I know you guys got back together. Should I get back together with my ex?
Yep.
And, our story is unique, yes, but I wouldn't want anyone to hear about our story and immediately think that they should get back together with an ex. I think most of the time, probably the majority of the time, when 2 people break up, it's probably for the best, honestly. Now, there's going to be situations like ours where we were meant to be together and we found ourselves coming back together organically. That's the operative word. That's what I want to highlight. We separated and divorced. We never thought we would see each other again. And we went on our own separate individual journeys because we as individuals wanted to figure this life thing out. Clearly, I didn't get it right. What did I do wrong? What can I fix? How can I change myself? How can I lean into self-development and really work on this? I want to create a life that I love. We each did that separately. And it just so happens that work, that self-development, that spiritual evolution led us back to each other to a point where, neither one of us was with anyone else, and it made sense at the time. It didn't make sense. It made sense to our souls. Like, it was like magnetic. We couldn't deny it. It would have been harder at that point to say goodbye and not be together than it was getting back together after having been divorced, because it was just so magnetic. You could feel it. It was palpable. To refuse that would have been really, really difficult. So I just want to say that, like, don't use our story as fuel to your fire in obsessing over an ex or someone that broke up with you or you broke up with. Yes, sometimes it happens where people can float back together organically, but I would say that is not the norm. This is the exception, not the rule.
Yep. Beautifully put. I've had many men, some of which were friends or people that I knew or people that I'd worked with in the past, who have reached out to me over the last 5 years since we've been back together to say, hey, I'm going through a breakup, or I broke up. Everything from I fucked up, or I don't know what happened, but I miss her, I love her. What do I do to get her back? Type of thing. Thinking that I went through the same process as if we got split up. If you know our story, it wasn't my call. It was Mimi's call. I didn't want to get divorced. And thinking that I had some sort of magic formula for getting my ex-wife back. And that was not the case at all. The short answer, guys, and again, disclaimer. This is a huge disclaimer in the sense that we don't know the full story. We're getting messages a lot of times. We will speak from our experience, and we are trying to give advice as best we can. But the most practical approach to this will always be, well, I'm going to ask 50 more questions. Probably want to talk long form before I give you any sort of advice. But for the sake of this show and just practical relationship advice, when this comes to me, as far as how do I get her back, how do I get back with her, et cetera, my relationship advice is move on.
Yeah.
Get going.
Yeah.
And live as if you need to thrive without her and without anybody else but yourself.
Yeah.
Start identifying your dream. What lights you up? Start identifying what are the steps towards being healthier? What are the steps towards having more abundance in my life, having more energy in my life? How do I become someone who has many relationships, friendships, deep family relationships, relationships with the opposite sex that are non-sexual, and then ultimately sexual or romantic relationships? You start doing that, you step into happiness. You inch closer to happiness. Your vibration and your frequency changes. The reason you and I worked is not because we decided that we both wanted the same outcome for our lives and it made more sense years later when we reconnected. Rather, because we changed course in our own individual journeys and we took steps towards health and vitality and abundance and connection to purpose, that our vibration literally changed.
Yeah.
The frequency became intoxicating to be around. And we were both seeing those manifest in our life. Opportunities presented themselves. We felt more freedom than we'd ever had. We physically felt stronger and capable and energetic. The relationships that we had with our friends and our family and our community were deeper and stronger. And by the time we stepped back into each other's life, which was very organic and at first was just strictly friendly, we could not help but be just attracted to the vibration that each other had. And so my advice for these guys is move on. One, because the more you hang on to this version that included pain and included all the things that this guy described around his own journey of dealing with maybe some challenges mentally or emotionally or even physically, but to hold on to or to try to fix what was, maybe it wasn't ever anything. Maybe it wasn't ever the ideal version of yourself. Our marriage was not what I wanted to go back to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's the thing is, like, part two, we call it part two because it is wildly, drastically, emphatically different than how we related to each other in part one. Yes, there are pieces that are similar and the same, but man, most of it is completely different.
Yeah.
And I would add to what you're saying, like, this is what I told him was, this is not easy. Breakups are never easy, but don't look back. You gotta move forward. And it might be different if what he was saying was like, you know, I've spent the last 2 years really working on myself. I feel like I'm in a really good place and I'm happier than ever. I'm healthier than ever. I'm, you know, have a great job that I'm lit up by. And I'm just realizing that I made mistakes and I want to apologize for those mistakes or whatever with her. That's a little bit different conversation. What he's saying is like, he's at an emotional low.
Yeah.
He is, you know, he uses the word depressed. That is not a state for you to be going out and looking for a life partner.
Yeah.
Like every relationship that we get into and out of offers us lessons. That's what relationships are. It is self-development work. When you break up with someone or they break up with you, this is an opportunity for reflection, looking at what went well, what didn't go well. What am I going to change? What can I reflect on it and learn from, such that my next relationship isn't the exact same as the one I just got out of? This is an opportunity for you to learn about yourself. Not only learn, but like take care of yourself on a physical level. This is, you know, looking at, how are you eating? How are you sleeping? What are the quality of friendships that you have in your life? Do you have a dream, goal, or objective for your life? Do you have a career? There's so much to figure out in your bubble, in your individual sphere of life. When you do that, not like you have to have every single thing in your life figured out and it's a 10 out of 10. I'm not saying that, but like get into a place where you genuinely feel happy.
Get some wins.
And you will almost organically manifest an aligned partner. You will attract a more aligned partner to where you are at. Think about, think about your ideal person, your ideal match. What kind of person are they going to be attracted to? Are they going to be attracted to the current version of you right now? Probably not, right? That is an invitation for you to evaluate what's going on in your life and make changes as they are necessary, and then attract a partner from that centered, balanced, happy version of you.
I'll give this individual 3 things to do before you even think about reaching out to this person. One should probably be at least like 6 months, barring unusual circumstances or, some crisis, but make a new friend. Go to the gym and get in shape. Give yourself 3 months at the gym, at least. Or doing something exercise related. Go for a hike, ride your bike, or
get
whatever.
Back to rock climbing or biking or whatever it is that you do.
Save for 6 months straight. Save more money than you're spending.
Yep.
And you get 6 months through that and check back in with yourself about how you're feeling.
I'm going to add one more.
Great.
Read Way of the Superior Man by David Deida.
Word.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like yesterday. Read that yesterday and do everything that Chase just said. You will be on your way towards making really important improvements in your life, such that you feel equipped and able to attract the partner that you desire. Whether it's this girl, who knows? I don't know. Yeah, it could happen. But don't force that. If it's meant to be, it'll be, my guy.
Yeah. Evaluate after 6 months, think again about, hey, do I still really want to reach out to her? If you do, it has to be without an expectation for a response, or being completely unattached to the response. Whether she says, "Oh my God, I love you. You sounds like things are amazing. Let's get back together." You should not be attached to that outcome. Nor should you be impacted if she says something completely opposite or completely ghosts you. So if you get to the point where you need to reach out, and I understand needing to reach out, there's an aspect of closure that's important for men to a certain degree. But if you do, it needs to be without expectation for a specific response, and it needs to be unattached to whatever that response is.
And very, very, very respectful if you do reach out, which I personally don't think you should, my guy. I really don't think.
I didn't reach out. We left, and I had a million things I wanted to say, and I was like, fuck it. I'm moving on. I'm just moving the fuck on.
And that was one ingredient that actually added to the piggy bank of information that was like, actually, I do want to get back together, because there was so much you could have said to me and not positive, right? And you didn't, and you moved on. And that, I understood, and I respected that you didn't make my life a living hell by how you treated me, when you could have, treated me badly, and it would have been like understandable to the rest of the world, right? I say this to him: if you do reach out, which I don't think you should, but if you do in the future, be respectful. If she is with someone else, she might be happy, she might be in love, and it might be the last thing that she needs is a text from her ex,
Or you need, if you do these things we're talking
Right.
about, like, you got great momentum, my guy.
Yeah.
Really good.
I hope that helps.
Great question. Legitimate question, man.
Yeah.
I've totally been there. I just totally get it.
And this is obviously a bigger conversation. We're only hearing one side of the story and everything like that. But, we've gotten many questions over the last few years of like, hey, do you guys take clients? Do you do counseling? And we've never said that we are like relationship counselors or anything like that, relationship coaches. We just speak from our own experience to the best of our ability, of course, from an unbiased perspective. But if you have ever thought, like, I wonder if Chase and Mimi would ever take me as a client or this or whatever, this is how you could, quote unquote, work with us, is send us your question.
Yep.
Send us your question to TheMedicinPodcast at gmail.com, and we can add it in to the next episode that we do of 3 questions and a crazy story. You might hear your question. Of course, we'll always leave these anonymous. But this is how you would, quote unquote, work with us. If you want our advice, send it to TheMedicinPodcast at gmail.
Totally. Next question. This one's fascinating. Kind of just wild.
And just sad.
Hey, Chase and Mimi, love your podcast, especially the relationship ones. I have a getting back together with your ex question.
A theme.
Funny. But my scenario is rather unique. I was diagnosed with cancer in my late 20s, and after a couple months of struggling with not only the diagnosis and initial treatment, which was surgery and chemo, my then girlfriend broke up with me and told me that it would be too hard for her to support me, as it brought up trauma for her, and as her dad had cancer and her mom had to take care of him when he was a kid. 2 years later, I made it through treatment and am technically cancer-free. My ex, after years of no contact since we broke up, started DMing me, texting me, and seems interested in getting back together. We've even met up for drinks. Honestly, I did not want the relationship to end, and so it does feel good that she has been flirting and is interested in getting back together. However, my friends and family are telling me to stay away, and I cannot help but feel conflicted.
So,
any advice?
Dude guy starts dating this girl. He gets cancer, has to go through treatment, and she decides that it's going to be too much for her, breaks up with him. And then once he's through his treatment and pronounced cancer-free, she wants to get back together. And he's like, WTF, what do I do?
Yeah. So there's a lot of things, disclaimers. This probably, like, how long were you guys together? What was
were you together for
how
2
deep
weeks
was
or
the
2
relationship?
years?
So there's a lot here, because I can, with more information, I can empathize with her. With more information, I can definitely,
Right.
See where, like, the friends and family are like, whoa, dude, she bailed out when you were like going through a hard time. That's a sign of, not being able to withstand turbulence in the relationship or with life itself. So, you want to take a crack at this?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we have no idea how long they were together before this happened. But just say it was a significant relationship, like exclusive boyfriend, girlfriend. If I was him, I don't think I could ever shake the wondering, gnawing feeling of, if shit gets hard again in any manner, if cancer comes back or whatever else, if things get hard, is she just going to bounce again? Like, I think that would gnaw at me so much that I don't know if I could do it, honestly. And I would also be like really questioning, like, are you that different? Because people can grow and change. Like when, speaking to our situation, like when I, said that I wanted a divorce, and then 3.5 years later, I was telling you, I don't intend on being with anyone else. It's like mixed messages, lady. But I was a very different person, and I had done a lot of work on myself and come back home to me, to my center. And I was basically, like, opening my heart, and you felt that, and it was very genuine. And I was basically saying, like, you're worth it to me. I don't care what I have to go through. I will walk through the fucking fire. I will lay down every shred of pride that I have because you are worth it to me. It's getting me like choked up. Is that conversation happening with these two? I don't know. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like she wanted to be with him, but it was too hard to, face the trauma of going through the whole cancer treatment, like from her childhood. And I can empathize with that for sure. But like, I just think that you got to get somebody that is going to be there and want to be there with you. It's just not a good sign. Yeah. I'm not saying that it couldn't work. It's not a good sign.
Yeah. I'm going to assume that this was more of a shallow move on her part. I don't know that for a fact, but that's the assumption before I give this advice. And I'm in alignment with you. Dude, you got a new bill, like a clean, fresh life. Let's get some reps in while you're feeling healthy. Like, go feel yourself out a little bit. You've gone through probably hell, and you've got a changed vision on what lights you up and what doesn't. Like, let's get some reps for a while. Date some other people for a while. Like be flirtatious and single, respectful, of course, but just feel yourself out. Put yourself into experiences, both with friendships and experience, and just like personal efforts of finding new passions, to just like find yourself for a minute. But you don't necessarily need to be a jerk to this girl.
Yeah, I think that you can like be like, let's stay friends. I respect you, but I'm really at a point where I think I need to move in a different direction. But you can stay friends
with boundaries. Right, and so I would say 9 times out of 10, move on. Mm-hmm. And energetically, the more you entertain this, the more you'll entertain this in the future with your work life, with your friendships, with your family, with your relationships. So this is setting precedent for the patterns that you will have as life goes on.
Yeah.
There is a 1 out of 10 chance. And the only reason I would say this is if you have developed a strong relationship with your intuition, and if you have evidence in your life of having listened to your intuition when rationale suggested otherwise, you've listened to that intuitive nudge, and it's been a big breakthrough for you. It's been a very positive thing for you. I would expect that you have a really strong relationship to your gut and your inner voice. And in that case, if that voice is overwhelming, and it's not from a place of insecurity, it's not from a place of liking to feel needed, but rather from this almost like overwhelming divine voice of, damn, man, it's really telling me to just transcend the logic in this moment and entertain this relationship again. I would say listen to it with boundaries.
And I would say have a very honest conversation with her and be real about, like, when you and I got back together, we had many very real, raw, honest, authentic, uncomfortable conversations. And so if you were entertaining getting back together with her, you must sit down and be like, when you broke up with me because I had cancer, this is what it did to me on the inside. This is what I went through. And so she knows like the impact of what happened. And if you're like, but I still love you and I think that we can be great together, how are we going to make sure that this doesn't happen again? What if I get cancer again? Like you can literally ask her that. What if the cancer comes back? Are you going to split again? So have these like uncomfortable conversations. And if she can't have these conversations with you, that's really good feedback. That's good information. And I'd probably be out of there.
Yeah. It's like, that's why I said, set boundaries and set almost like a timeline on, the criteria that needs to be met in order for the relationship to evolve past just friendship. So I think we're on the same page there. Great question. And good luck to you, my friend. Mm-hmm. Third question, and this is a rapid fire, and this is a great one. What are subtle red flags during the talking stage of the relationship that should not be ignored? Take it away. We can rapid fire this one.
Yeah. Subtle red flags. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list, but these are just the ones that came to my head. If they are not interested or curious about your life at all, that's a huge red flag. Do you want me to just list or do you want to alternate?
Sure. Clingy, willing to hijack their life to accommodate your preferences and your schedule.
Yeah.
Stay away from the Klingons.
The stage 5 clingers. If you have to initiate all of the deeper questions, like if you're out on a date and all of the questions are coming from your brain and you are someone that is lit up by connection, like deep connection, and it's always coming from you, you might have great conversation because you're a good question asker, but that's going to get boring and it's going to get annoying and you're probably going to have some resentment.
Yeah. Really similar, not bringing ideas or topics to the conversation, or defaulting to complaining, or defaulting to always talking about things that are pessimistic in nature, because that is easy to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also if the person that you're seeing seems content to keep you confused or in the dark about what your relationship is.
Right.
Like if you're looking for an exclusive, boyfriend or girlfriend or a partner, like a life partner, you're not just like dating just to date or like just getting out there, swiping right, swiping left to, hook up. If you're actually looking for a partner and the person says they are too, but they're like fine with keeping you confused and they aren't, if this is a man, they aren't leading the conversation about like, hey, I'm really into you. Like, what is this? That needs to be happening. And
Totally.
If it's not, that's a red flag.
Talking about their ex more than what is necessary. It's one thing to be like, yeah, I was in a long relationship for a while. It was a serious relationship and just didn't work out. We broke up. Nice guy. Or my last boyfriend was a fucking asshole. And move on. Like we don't need to talk about it all the time. There's a difference between being informative versus just excessive in the way that you talk about your ex.
And I think it's okay to bring it up to like talk about what you've learned. Like in my last relationship, this happened, and coming out of this, I really learned that this XYZ is important to me, and I want a partner who does this, not that, or whatever. Yeah. Like talking about what you learned, I think is totally fine. If you are always the one initiating hanging out or seeing each other, or you're always the one to text or call them, they're never like texting or calling you out of the blue. If you're always initiating the hangouts or the dates, probably not great.
Yeah, no, it's good. Talking about their trauma when it is not organic, i.e. fake vulnerability to talk about either themselves or to elicit some level of intimacy because they might feel bad for how traumatic your background was. Again, if you have legitimate trauma and it's a sacred container in a sacred space, it's one thing to share, and that's almost a therapeutic exercise. It's almost like a gift of opening such that you could let this other individual into your life to participate in some sort of healing or some sort of support. But when it's excessive, when it's not organic, when everything you talk about somehow winds up into the traumatic experiences you've had in your life and your trauma, red flag.
Definitely. If they make fun of or talk down to you, like either alone or in front of people, like if they're with their family or friends and they are jab, poke, making fun of you or putting you down to like somehow look funny or better or whatever, that is a huge, huge, huge red flag.
Right. Yeah, it's really good. Piggybacking on your taking too long to reply, or you're always the one inviting people to do something. Like on the other end of the spectrum, if they're always wanting you available, like, hey, why aren't you responding to my text? Or like 7 texts in a row, like, where are you, WTF?
Why aren't you responding?
Why aren't you responding? They show up to your house uninvited. May or may not have happened before.
To you.
Red flag. Yeah.
If they belittle your hobbies, interests, or career, huge red flag. They should be like asking you about it and like intrigued by it, even if they're not into these things too. If you're a horse girl and you got a guy that is belittling your horse enthusiasm.
Fucked up. It's one thing to poke a little bit. That's kind of fun. But to belittle is...
There's a difference, though.
Yeah, of course there is.
For sure a difference.
Evidence of financial instability. And this can happen a few different ways. But whether they are using 7 different credit cards and none of them are working, whether you are feeling like you are holding up the entire financial dynamic of the relationship, and there's not even a conversation around financial support, or they're just open and honest about having, maybe it's really bad credit issues, maybe it's a bunch of debt that they've racked up, et cetera, that is gonna fuck up a relationship. Red flag.
It's not gonna go anywhere good. It's not going to add to your relationship. Now, there are situations where people get, have a string of bad luck where they make an investment and it doesn't work out, or they, lose their job or something like that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about like, clearly this person has a pattern of not being responsible with money. It will come up if you choose to stay together. I would say having no motivation, dreams, or goals. Huge red flag.
Yep. And that's the same one that I would say. Lack of a dream, lack of purpose, and even just a lack of interest. It's so attractive when you sense that someone is just genuinely interested in a particular idea, a particular path, a project that they're on. It's contagious. And you want someone who has this generative drive. We talked about that on episodes in the past, and this fervor for living.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think lack of accountability, or if they're always pointing to difficult situations in their life and kind of in this victim mindset, like life is happening to me, this is all happening to me, quote, it's always someone else's fault, right? Like if you see a pattern of them not really taking responsibility or ownership for their reality, for their, certainly some things are just out of your control, but if everything comes back to them being a victim, not a great sign.
Nope.
And the last one here, this one's kind of funny, but definitely a red flag if they have an overly physically affectionate relationship with their mother or with a parent or a sibling.
Yeah.
It's like if they're like, kissing for 3 seconds or like always finding an opportunity to like touch their sister or
yeah, that may be a not so subtle red flag.
Yeah. Yes. All right. So moving on to the last part of the entree of the show, we call this 3 questions and a crazy story. So this is the crazy story. Do you want me to read it?
Just to give everybody a heads up, we'll read the crazy story. Most of these do not need advice, but rather we'll reiterate the moral of the story.
Yes. There's always a moral to these crazy stories. All right. This is a anonymous story. We do not know this individual. First night in a new city, and I call my mother to tell her I have arrived safely. She tells me that the girl I dated when I was 16 or 17, I was 23 at the time and hadn't heard a peep for 5 years. This girl called out of the blue looking for me and left her number. Lonely and bored, I rang her up and had a strange catch-up session. She told me she was engaged to a woman and that her life after we broke up was a series of unfortunate events. We hung up on pleasant terms with no plans to keep in touch. 3 days later, I am exiting my building, and who is standing there in the rain waiting? Yep, her. She had flown 2,500 miles in the middle of the night because she thought we were destined to be together. Told me how she was so torn up about us not being together that she had pulled out all of her pubic hair. She also brought her fiance, her female fiance, who was as crazy as she was and was urging my ex to have a baby with me. I calmly tried to tell her that this was insane and that I had no interest in any of this when out of nowhere, all goes black. I wake up to chaos as my doorman is holding the fiance down, waiting for the police. Turns out she had hit me on the back of the head with a full bottle of champagne they had brought to celebrate with. Arrests and restraining orders followed. Dude.
Unreal. Thank you for whoever sent this. This is from Reddit, I believe. They sent it from Reddit to us, and this is just absolutely unreal.
So, moral of the story for me is don't tell your exes exactly where you live. Yeah. WTF, what was he thinking?
Really good. Moral of the story for me?
Yeah.
Don't date someone whose pubic hair is long enough to completely rip out of their body in moments of stress.
Oh my gosh. That is rich. So rich. And it's a great story now. Hopefully he didn't get any long-term brain damage from the full bottle of champagne to the back of the head. That could literally kill someone.
Absolutely. Like this is straight up from like a wild comedy show or something.
It's from a movie that's like, this movie is too far-fetched. This is like a bad movie. It's way too wild.
Guys, that was it. Rounding out our fine dining experience. We would really like to know what you think of the new format.
Yeah.
Obviously, submit relationship questions or anything that you see or hear, because we're going to be considering pretty much all of these for these types of shows. And we'll have these bits, these segments that we'll call appetizers, and then we'll have the main entree being some relationship advice, some relationship storytelling, and a good moral of the story.
If you have questions or crazy stories, you can always send to TheMedicinPodcast at Gmail. We will always keep it anonymous. But if for some reason you want a shout out, you can let us know and we'll shout you out. But it really helps if, you guys are giving us feedback based on if you like this format or not. We'll keep it going. And it's just fun. It's just fun to do something different and to pivot and to insert some novelty into the show. We've been doing this for 4+ years now, and there's always cycles and seasons. And so this feels really good and really fun. So we would love to hear from you guys. Thank you so much for listening and hanging out with us. We'll talk to you next time. Go spread some light. Okay, bye.
Thank you so much for listening.
If you enjoyed that, check out right over here for some more fun clips.
Oh, and you're going to want to subscribe.
Bye.